Welcome to the Warchant TV Sunday Breakdown Show. We're here at the Tomahawk Grill on Tennessee Street talking Florida State football after another win. It's nice to be able to talk a couple weeks in a row about a win. Florida State got the job done, 41-16 over Maryland. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm joined, of course, as always, by D.C. Reeves, managing editor. You moved back over to that seat this week. I took a week off.
Yeah, I know. I like that one better.
I'm not giving it up. Sorry, buddy. Well, like I said, Florida State 41-16, kind of, a day at the office. They did about how we expected, pretty well on both sides of the ball. Another day at the office where EJ had a solid performance. Defense did pretty well, held him down. But I guess let's talk a little bit, just winning two in a row. And not only winning two in a row, but winning as you should win, as expected. What is that? Is this team kind of maybe gotten past that hiccup now, you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the interesting thing, it's what I addressed in that instant analysis that we have on warchant.com, is that, you start to believe now that the Wake Forest performance was the exception, as opposed to, it's just Duke last week. Well, not that Maryland's anything, exciting. They're certainly a disappointment. But to put those two performances in a row with a healthy E.J. Manuel, run for 200-plus yards in both games, balanced attack in both games, and then if anything, it really makes you wonder what if. It makes you wonder if E.J.'s healthy, if, for the Clemson game, if he starts that Wake Forest game, where they would be. So on the good side, yes, it's good to string together two games like that. On the bad side, you wonder if they were at full strength like this, what it would have meant earlier in the year.
I still think at the end of the year, everybody's going to look back at that. Assuming they do what we think they're going to do the rest of the season, we're all going to look back at that Wake Forest game, and everybody's just going to go, that's the game that potentially took away what could have been a really, especially if Clemson drops one or two more games in the ACC, you're really going to kick yourself. Maybe the most promising thing from this last game, DC, is the first time I remember no injuries.
Yeah.
How about that? Right. I kept waiting and nothing. It looked like the team was entirely healthy, so that means hopefully next week you get back Rashad Green, you're even healthier.
Yeah, and we can't rule out any injuries popping up between Sunday and Monday.
It does happen occasionally. Somebody sneaks through.
But for the most part, nothing glaring. And really, they went through the whole game. Nobody really banged up. Nobody, last week, Xavier Rhodes gets hurt, and a couple times, Jacoby McDaniel, of course, has the season-ending injury. Even just the little things, even the being helped off the field, all that stuff. They were able to get through scot-free, which, a very rare sight this season.
Yeah, it's a good sign because things haven't exactly gone FSU's way in the injury department lately. Well, we're going to take a little break here, and when we come back, we're going to break down the offense. Florida State putting up some pretty good numbers on that side of the ball, both in passing and rushing, a balanced attack, and we'll talk about that next on the Warchant TV Sunday Breakdown Show. Welcome back to the Sunday Breakdown Show. We're here at the Tomahawk Grill on Tennessee Street getting ready for some NFL. We're not going to say the T word because that's going to be all the rage today, so we're going to just skip that.
No T word.
But we're going to talk college football. Florida State winners 41-16 over Maryland to finally get above 500, which we haven't had in a while for Florida State, so that's a good sign. Let's start with the offense, DC, now. Pretty good, 482 total yards of offense for the second straight week, over 200 rushing yards. That's very encouraging, and on a decent passing game as well. Spread it out. 5 different receivers had 25 or more yards receiving, so nice balanced attack all around, starting with that running game. And obviously, it's like the light kind of turned on all of a sudden, DC, from those first few games. And the last two, all of a sudden, where's that running game been? Is there something fundamentally happening here? Why are we suddenly having a running game?
I think there's a few things in play. One, maybe this offensive line, even compared to when Gatko and Spurlock were in, maybe this offensive line is a little bit better. Maybe Garrett Faircloth's playing better. Bobby Hart, of course, is going to have some time, but he's obviously holding his own. So there's that part of it. There's also Jermaine Thomas emerging. This guy was an afterthought and he only had 4 carries last week, but 4 carries for 28 yards. Then he comes in 9 carries for 86 yards and a touchdown. Looked really good out there, and frankly, you haven't gotten much from Ty Jones, and obviously Chris Thompson's hurt. So to have that senior leader, to have a veteran guy that you can put in there and not just be relying on these young guys, Freeman and Wilder, in pass protection, you got to worry about that. So to have a senior step in, I think that's a big help. So, overall, I think there's a lot of different things in play, but hey, over 200 yards both times, I think that's a big help, and we'll see if it gets it going.
Well, how about that? Yeah, I feel good for Jermaine Thomas. He was a guy that, and we found out afterwards, Jimmo mentioned he had a concussion back in the spring. He was really limited because of that. We didn't see him much early in the season. And you kind of wondered, have we really seen the last of Jermaine Thomas other than maybe some mop-up duty? Yeah. So I think it was very encouraging for him. Had 86 yards rushing. What I really liked in the one rush where he had that long touchdown run, you look at that, and this is he made the right cutback. He had all the blocks at the point of attack, had his man. Every time there's a long run, who's out in front every time? It's Lonnie Pryor. Who's out there, makes a big block down the road, and then he has one more block to make, and then Burt Reed, one of the smallest guys on the field, makes a nice block at the end to free him up to make that touchdown run. So that was a very encouraging sign for the running game. And then Devonta Freeman, second straight game hit 100 yards rushing, with the second straight game 100 or more yards rushing for Devonta Freeman for a true freshman. Last player to do that, 1986, Sammy Smith. Having to go back the last time a true freshman ran for back-to-back 100-yard games. So that's pretty good company right there. If you can keep that up, so we like the running game.
Yeah, and I think the other big thing is in the second half. I mean, look at the second halves of games. Let's face it, the running game wasn't that great, really.
20 yards rushing.
Yeah, I think it was 15 carries, 20 yards, if I remember correct. And then they finished with 210. Now, people would say, oh, well, that's in garbage time. Well, you got to remember the first few games, they played from behind the entire time. So what's happened is they've played from ahead. Look at the rushing attempts. They've gone over 40 rushing attempts in the last 2 weeks. They only threw the ball 14 times against Duke. They only threw the ball 26 times against Maryland. So, hey, you can't really – you don't think Maryland knew they were running the football? And even though they were up, they were still able to get big yards and break off big runs, Freeman and Thomas. So I think that's a good sign moving forward.
Yeah, a little bit at the end is garbage time. At the same point, for a lot of that, they're only up 2 scores in the third quarter, 14 points. That game's hardly over at all, and they'll be able to run the ball at that point when you really need it. And that's the time when you've got a lead, but the game's not over yet. That's when it's most important to be able to run the football effectively. And they've done that for 2 straight weeks. Very encouraging. Yeah. Well, the other side of the ball, passing game again, pretty solid. There wasn't a big long ball game like we had against Duke. It wasn't bombs away. But still, overall, pretty effective. E.J. Manuel completing 18 to 26 for 264 yards. If there was an issue a little bit for Maryland, who's so depleted on defense to get 4 sacks, some breakdowns there I still think they need to work on.
Yeah, I think it was the worst pass protection performance of the year, I think, for Florida State. They were so good last week. Got picked up a couple great blitzes. You talk about those big plays that they had last week. Man, one of those, the Rodney Smith touchdown in the first quarter against Duke, was set up by absolutely flawless pass protection. So they were very good in it last week. Not so good this week. A couple blitzes right up the middle. I mean, just EJ had no chance. So that's something I'm sure they'll get corrected. But, it's a work in progress. I mean, this offensive line, you can't expect, considering their situation, you can't expect this offensive line to just walk out and start dominating people. It's going to take time, unfortunately, and that's just been overall, I guess, one of the disappointments of the year in terms of what you've gotten from them.
Yeah, and I think the other encouraging sign is a receiver unit. I mean, you had 5 different receivers get 25 or more yards in this game, and the reemergence of the guy we've been all season, you felt so bad for him. He worked so hard, started doing well, and had the ankle injury. Now it looks like he's finally bounced back, and that's Burt Reed. So very encouraging to have Burt Reed contributing. And then, unless he has a setback, I would assume we would get Rashad Green back this week for the next game. So, I mean, you really got to be encouraged. If they can pass protect a little bit, that passing game should really start clicking here soon.
Yeah, you got to think. Rashad Green's warmed up in the past 2 games. He's been out there taking passes the past couple games, and that's nothing new. Burt Reed did the same thing and didn't play. But 2 weeks now on an ankle issue, you got to think it's getting pretty close. And give Burt Reed credit. I mean, if the thought crossed my mind that maybe he was going to sort of be left behind in getting back into it. I mean, an ankle injury, you're off your feet, you're not able to get back into game shape. I wouldn't have been surprised at all if these freshmen moved up and Burt Reed sort of became an afterthought. But hey, give him credit for the way he played, and obviously he's going to still remain an important part of the offense. 5
catches for 76 yards. It's good to see Burt get back out there and be healthy again. When we come back, we're going to flip it to the other side of the ball and talk about the defense. Pretty solid performance. We'll break it down next on the Warchant Sunday Breakdown Show. Welcome back to the Warchant Sunday Breakdown Show here at the Tomahawk Grill on Tennessee Street, talking Florida State football following the 41-16 victory over the Maryland Terrapins to move to 1 game over 500. So they're back on track to be bowl eligible. It's looking pretty good for that right now. I think unless they fall apart, I think Florida State will be a bowl. Maybe we'll talk about that later, what bowl they might be in. But a day at the office for Mark Stoops' unit, I think pretty good performance. 16 points, 331 total yards. Couple things I think you really like, DC. 6 sacks, a lot of pressure, and then holding C.J. Brown. That was a big concern coming into this game. You completely shut out his ability to run.
Yeah, the guy ran for 162 yards last week, set a school record for rushing for a quarterback in a game, and then they bottled him up. I mean, you had to know that was going to be the emphasis coming in. You had to think that C.J. Brown was really the slim chances they had to come in and really compete or try to win this game was going to rest with him. and they were able to bottle him right up. Like you said, tons of tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and then he's knocked out of the game, albeit on maybe an illegal hit, but debatable. but regardless, then he ends up being knocked out of the game. You have to go back to Danny O'Brien, and it was pretty much all over from there. So yeah, without a doubt, I think the top thing that they were able to accomplish is what they wanted to accomplish coming in, which is contain C.J. Brown.
It was interesting too. Obviously, I think Maryland got a spark when O'Brien came out. They looked really like a better. They looked like a better offense, and it was funny talking to Telvin after the game, and he kind of said, they have a lot of respect. He didn't want to say they didn't respect C.J. Brown, but you could tell from his comments when I asked about it how they feared what Danny O'Brien could do offensively a lot more than they did with. Because let's face it. Brown is kind of a one-man show. You know what he's going to do. If you can stop that, there's really not a whole lot else he can do.
And he wasn't a proven passer coming in.
No.
He was completing less than 50% of his passes. And if I remember correct, I think Maryland was 4 for 5 on third downs in the third quarter. So once O'Brien had come in, so he certainly had the ability to move the ball. Now, the total yardage against Florida State, even that's a little bit deceiving. They had 331 total yards. I think they had 80 on that last drive where they threw a couple long passes when the game was already sealed up. So you're talking about when it mattered, when it counted, you're talking about less than 300 yards that the Florida State defense gave up. That's quite a performance.
Very encouraging. The other thing that I think has been the issue, which they did a little bit, they let one slip away. The big plays, and that's what we saw against Clemson, we saw it against Wake Forest, all these big plays of defense, and they let one slip away, one long play. But other than that, I don't think they had one longer than 25 yards in that 60-whatever yard, that one play they had. So very encouraging there. Defensively, I mentioned before, I love the play of Telvin Smith. I think he just brings so much of that, brings the enthusiasm. He's got ridiculous speed out there. You love having that in your linebacker. I think his ability to cover is done well, and it just probably my defensive MVP for this game. But there's another guy on the line that stood out.
Brandon Jenkins for sure, and also on Smith. Hey, could you have a better guy that fits trying to contain a running quarterback? He is your prototypical linebacker for that scheme. But how about Brandon Jenkins too? He gets a sack and a half, and it's been tough for him. I know we've talked to him, and of course he doesn't want to come out and say it, but I don't know how big a fan he is of doing all this stuff like standing up and doing all these things. He had such a great year last year just putting his hand in the ground and getting 13 and a half sacks. So I don't know how big a fan he is, but Jimbo's praised him really for weeks now, how effective he's been, even though it's not showing up in the stat sheet. So you got to think he's excited, and it's definitely encouraging for him to show up in the stat sheet the way he did with the sack and a half, and really playing well. That left tackle, or both those tackles, really had no chance against Werner and especially Jenkins.
Well, I think Jenkins is finding what happens when you lead the nation in sacks. You're a marked man. He's usually double teamed, and the teams are going out of their way to make sure that he's contained. So it's a little bit makes his job a little bit harder, but very good game for him. And I think one other guy I want to mention, Xavier Rhodes, that I thought really kind of struggled early. We weren't getting. I think the last couple of weeks we've seen the real Xavier Rhodes. He's starting to make plays. He's sticking on guys, and you're starting to see more and more. I think teams are starting to let's not throw to his side anymore, which was the case at the end of last year. So that's very good to see as well.
Right.
If there's an area of concern, I think on defense, DC, and it happened again. Where are the turnovers? You played one of the worst offensive teams out there, and you couldn't force a single turnover again.
Yeah, that whole situation baffles me. And on one hand, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Look at this game on Saturday. How about the fumble that Maryland had? Going in, and then the guy kicks the ball, it bounces around, and it just happens to go to an offensive lineman. That's sort of.
But they didn't even force that one. That was just
true. But my point is the teams that do have those big turnover margins, the teams that do collect a lot of turnovers, are the ones that are getting the tip passes. The ones. Again, giving them the benefit of the doubt. On the other hand, you need to put yourself in position to be able to make plays like that. And you would think with pressure, when you have a big lead, you know that they're throwing the football, there should be situations where you can create turnovers, and they haven't done it. So I really don't know where I side on that. I think it's probably both. I think they haven't been as good as they could be in situations where they could force turnovers. On the other hand, every 50-50 ball, every 50-50 tip pass seems to hit the ground or go right into the gut of an offensive lineman or whatever the case may be. But hey, 6 forced turnovers in 7 games. That's a scary number, how low that is.
Yeah, and the other thing is now we've gone 7 straight games with a cornerback getting in. Has there ever been a team that's got an entire season with a cornerback getting an interception? That's
much
crazy.
Less 3 guys that are going to play in the league.
Yeah, and so you got to start wondering, is there some scheme issues or something else going on? Maybe that's something we'll get into a little bit later. It just kind of stuck out to me me. Special teams, very good performance all around. Very encouraging to see that the downside, Dustin Hopkins 1 field goal away from tying Graham Gano's record consecutive field goals. He missed it barely.
Right.
Now, and he was doing some people saying it looked like he made it, but I mean, officially he did not make it. But he goes on to make his next 2. So still a pretty good performance. You knew it had to end eventually.
Yeah, I think the referee was Graham's cousin. I don't know, down there on that upright. I'm not sure. But I had a couple of people text me right away watching on TV, and anybody watching this might have been watching on TV. They said it was really close. They actually thought it went in. So surprising to not see a review or a replay on that.
They review points after touchdowns, but not field goals.
Right, exactly. But hey, especially with what was on the line there with that record. So, but hey, 17 in a row. I mean, the guy 10 of 11. Is he 10 of 11 now? 10 of 11 now?
11 out of 12,
something like that. Yeah, I mean, just a fantastic. I mean, you get so spoiled, as Jimbo said in the postgame, with a kicker like that. I mean, the guy, 53 yards, yeah, it's good. Yeah. I mean, there's teams, look at Oklahoma on Saturday. I mean, the guy can't make a 28-yard field goal, and you forget that when you have him in your lineup.
Mm-hmm. Very fortunate there. Now, we finally saw Greg Reed return a touchdown, and then the most controversial play of the game, of course, was the fair catch. I've never heard that before, pointing to the football. For most people we talked to that looked at the rule book, said that it didn't make any sense. Apparently you have to have your arm above your head making a motion for it to be considered a fair catch. So that was just crazy right there.
Yeah, that entire drive is going to be somewhere on Doug Rhodes, the ACC official's desk, because you start with the Greg Reed call to the point. It was either the next play or a couple plays was a horse collar out of bounds, which is the true definition of a horse collar. I mean, as I tweeted out right when I saw that, if that isn't a horse collar, they need to just get rid of the rule. And then it ends with the missed field goal by Dustin Hopkins that I guess is debatable whether that went in. So maybe all those plays will make it. But hey, that's how it goes, and of course didn't really affect the outcome. But yeah, you'd like to have seen that for Greg Reed because it's been since Sanford, I think the start of the 2010 season.
Yeah.
He's so electrifying, and that would only built his confidence, I'm sure.
Well, that'd be easy when they cut up the film to send to the ACC for the mistake. They just start at the beginning of that series in the end and just send them that and say,
here's the TV telecast
issue.
Of that series.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's wrap it up overall here, but good encouraging sign. 2 straight wins in convincing fashion, beating the spread for the people who like to gamble out there. It's interesting how that played out. Now, where does Florida State go from here? The schedule continues to be easy. We've got NC State coming. I think really until that Miami game, you figure this team's going to coast. I know they've got the short turnover to go to Boston College, but really as bad as they're playing. So, I mean, at this point, DC, and I mentioned this on the Wednesday show we did last week. I think it's really looking like the Champs Bowl right now, assuming they do what they're going to do. I think there's an outside shot at Chick-fil-A. If they win out and Clemson goes, you never know how they may do that matchup. I really think it's going to be one of those 2 bowl games.
Yeah, I agree. I think you never know how a bowl feels about having a team come in back-to-back. But with it geographically, with it being in Atlanta, there's a big FSU fan base there too. It would be a good fit. But yeah, you'd have to say percentage right now is the Champs Bowl. And hey, there's been some projections out there. Maybe they play Notre Dame. Of course, Notre Dame lost on Saturday to USC. But anybody who can get Notre Dame, right? If they were 6-6, they're going to go to a good bowl game. So, I agree with you. I think it's probably maybe 60-40 right now, probably Champs Bowl. But not bad all things considered. And I think that holds true even if they were to lose a game somewhere down the road. If that's Miami or Florida, right? One game. But got to give credit to Miami too. All of a sudden, that Miami game is looking bigger and bigger as the weeks go on. They beat Georgia Tech pretty convincingly at home.
Are you the one that picked Miami?
Yeah.
I got to give you props for that. Yeah, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've just started to play really well, and you know what? I think Georgia Tech's now proven
people are figuring that out. That offense.
Exactly. They beat up a few sort of pansies early on, and now they're struggling. But I think Florida State's in a good situation. I think if they go 5-1 or 6-0, which is very possible, they're going to be in one of those 2 games.
Yeah, but the other downside of that, if they lose 2 or 3 more games, then you're talking maybe have fun in El Paso, DC.
Actually, that'll be Paul Thomas.
Paul Thomas will be headed out to El Paso. Or, I mean, it wouldn't even be as bad. I know they've been out in Nashville a few years ago for that Music City. That's not a bad, I'm sure they'd have a better crowd here if they could go to Chick-fil-A or Champs. But, I mean, those are probably the other 2.
Yeah.
If you lose a couple games, you could slide down to one of those bowls right there. But, I mean, still, some decent goals on the horizon if you win out. And I think the other thing is recruiting has remained remarkably stable for this team. I really thought after that Wake Forest game, you might really start losing some guys. Now, I think you lost some ground with Mario Edwards. While he's still technically a commitment, you've still got some work to do to make sure you can hang on to that commitment. But really, everybody else, everything in turn is solid. But they cannot afford any more slip-ups down the road. If they want to keep that solid recruiting class intact.
Yeah, but as you said, take away Miami, you couldn't ask for an easier ACC schedule at the end of the year. I mean, you're talking about Virginia at home, NC State at home, at Boston College on 5 days rest. Hey, if I were going to play somebody on 5 days rest in the ACC on the road, it would be Boston College. And you know what else that does is that also gives Florida State 9 days before the Miami game. So if you look at it glass half full, that gives them a couple more days to prepare for the biggest ACC game they have left. So I think it's a pretty good situation for them. And again, Miami, Florida, I mean, those are the two games where a loss, I think, is even in play at all.
I don't know, extra time prepared didn't exactly help them for Wake Forest, so maybe they're better on a short week.
Right.
I don't know, we'll find out. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. I appreciate you tuning in to the Warchant Sunday Breakdown Show. Thanks to DC and Eli and Reed for helping put this together. And right here, if you want to come out every Sunday, around 11:30, we start broadcasting and doing this. And of course, you can follow us all week long on warchant.com. We're going to preview this week, of course, NC State. Have recruiting updates from Michael Langston, our recruiting writer. We'll bring you up to date on that. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter. DC, very active. Most of the staff's very active on there. And of course, we'll have our Wednesday show, which will broadcast on Thursday. We'll preview NC State in a little bit more detail. And I know you and Paul will have your podcast on Tuesday night, so look forward to that. Thanks for tuning in. And if you're not a Warchant subscriber, 7-day free trial. Check it out. Good night, folks.